Welcome back, our dedicated listeners. We feel so blessed with the amazing response we have been getting for this podcast. Okay, enough self-praise now. Let me get back to another episode of potential award-winning podcast, Lexdiscuss Cafe, with huge emphasis on the word potential. This is the second part of our conversation with Mr. Biswarup Ghosh, an engineer turned lawyer hailing from the prestigious IIT Kharagpur. In the first part of this podcast, Biswarup shares his experiences of studying at IIT Kharagpur and transitioning into a legal role at a tech company. He also highlights the benefit of his alma mater, including the exposure to various disciplines and world-class education. He also discusses his professional journey from IP law to contracting and privacy and his current role at Cambium Networks. He also touches on the importance of lawyers in tech companies adapting to the environment and communicating effectively with engineers. Our conversation then shifts to the challenges of keeping up with regulatory changes and open source software in the context of law and technology. Lastly, Biswarup emphasizes the importance of both legal and business knowledge for success in the field and the need for law schools to teach practical skills such as policy implementation and technology literacy. Today, we continue our conversation, unraveling more layers of his experiences, challenges, and unique perspectives. So, Biswarup, the next question is really important. The buzzword these days, what do you think generative AI is going to do to the legal profession, and what legal profession should be doing in this regard?
Wow. I was just hoping this will come up. So I'm happy. Today we have two crowds.
Right.
One is who have heard of generative AI and another is have seen and done that. If I were to speak to set of people who have heard about generative AI but have not seen the magic or have not had their hands on that particular thing, I would get a response that this is again a fad. But myself being on that other group where I have actually seen, I have put my hands on, I have used on my personal capacity, generative AI, the GPTs of this world. In fact, I've gone ahead and worked on some small projects on training of the LLMs, etc. I can say that this is path-breaking. Let me get into the specifics. Now, generative AI, we end up speaking a lot about generative AI. Let me take a step back and let me speak about AI itself, right? Because generative AI is essentially when we are mostly talking about prompt-based text-to-text kind of a generation sort of thing. But AI in itself is extremely powerful. If I have to break down my work and break it down into what kind of technologies today intervene in my world. So one part of it is I get tons of emails, and a lot of it is something I have to bucket between what I do within 5 seconds, what I essentially need to put in some time and collect certain information and then reply within certain period of time, say a day, and what is a little spread out. I can actually reply back in say maybe a week and it's fine. Now, generative AI is something which helps me in prioritizes this task much better than how I would otherwise do it, where I go into Outlook and create tasks for myself. So I keep on creating tasks, never being able to complete those. But with these kind of Microsoft Insights, if you have seen these coming up and saying that, hey, you have a mail which you received on, say, 3 days back, and this is waiting for your reply, and then this is something which are the kind of documents which go with respect to, you being able to reply it well. Fantastic use case. The second bit is I need to then bucket it into the kind of case matters that I need to handle. Now here, generally I have to track. Going back to this open source example, some open source software comes to my table. I have to go ahead and do the review of the license and then go back and give an approval or some suggested steps to take care of this, right? Now, again, AI is extremely helpful in number one, if I were to go ahead and figure out what those open source software are. These new software which are today developing, which can pick it up utilizing AI and almost anticipate what are those kind of code snippets, fantastic. The workflow pieces that are getting built up in this area to manage the workflows that I push for someone's recommendation, for someone's approval. I receive certain approval or certain comments from them. I collate all these together and send back as an advice to my internal customer generative AI has a fantastic use case. Going to the pieces where I need to do drafting. I need to draft a contract. I need to draft, say, a patent application. I need to draft any of the applications which are non-contentious. Generative AI gives a fantastic first step. Generative AI falters when we want to create a work product which is a final work product. I am continuously seeing today that generative AI is not there. Maybe AI is not there to basically come up with such kind of work products. That's where an AI-enabled lawyer is a much better place, because it frees me up from a lot of mundane kind of a task and helps me focus on to things which are essentially material for me as well as the company. The last piece where it comes down to the contentious issue. And this is where specifically for me, I am not super excited about utilizing generative AI when, say, a court application has to be drafted, or where there is some sort of these kind of applications which essentially have to be filed in front of courts in India or in most of the countries in APAC are concerned. That I am not yet very excited about. That is not something which I can see that is happening to that kind of a scale. So a long-winded way of saying this, being in the position where I have already utilized, I have used certain part of it, I can see that this technology is definitely something which is path-breaking, no doubt about it. Where we utilize, how we utilize, some places has got immediate applications. Some places, I'm not so sure. Maybe down the line it is going to come up. And of course, there are some other places where it doesn't make sense to touch it. Now, one last piece is about the research. We end up continuously required to do research on what are these kind of laws, what are these kind of implications, regulations,
Right.
order, notices, etc. I mean, that's the fantastic use case of AI, and I have been utilizing in and out AI for that. Being able to type it down in natural language and being able to get a response which is much better than a Google search result eases my life immensely.
Right.
So that's what it is. And your second part of the question about what should lawyers do about it? I mean, there is nothing stopping the lawyers from starting to try. I mean, see this as a tool. And then also keeping in mind that the more we remain inhibited with something new, the chances are that, the wave is only going to bite us. So therefore, I mean, what I have been doing, I can't really go ahead and represent the whole community here, but what I have been doing is anytime there is a new tool, I have been trying to make use of it, figuring out where it makes sense, trying to understand what sort of risk it carries while we are doing this, and then wait for the right opportune moment to actually put it into work.
Completely agree with your thoughts there. But one of the reason that we invited you for the podcast because of having a technical background earlier, and I'm sure you have met people who don't share that background. Why do you think there's so much reluctance in adopting new technology among lawyers? And my follow-up question to that would be, considering that you are in a tech company where everybody's adopting AI left, right, center, so do you think the legal department also gets influenced a little more to do that, or do you believe that's not the case?
Well, Abhi, you have to see that, there are these different worlds which even exist already.
Right.
This is a personal story. So I had been to a district court for one of our matters going on there. And there I see what's the process. All right, let me explain to you the process. There is a lawyer who is going to sit down and first write the application on their hand. So when I sit in front of them, I do not see a laptop in front of them. Our handheld devices are in fact non-smartphones, right? So to say the dumb phones. And then the process moves on. So the lawyer would draft it and then they would send it to someone who is going to again write it. And mind you, I mean, most of our district courts for their own good, they work in the native language. I mean, they will work in say a Hindi or a Bengali or say Telugu or Tamil, etc. So now this is a process which gets followed. Essentially, if we are trying to say today that why is a lawyer who is today writing it on the paper and then getting it typed on say a computer or maybe a typewriter? I just saw a typewriter a few days back, so I'm telling it with a lot of conviction that this happens. Why is it that guy or that person not inclined to use AI? So we are not really asking the right question, because you see, none of us actually reached our graduation before having completed our first class. On the other side, you are looking at large law firms, you are looking at large corporates. And I'm going to only speak about the corporates over here. Now, in corporates, we end up seeing that our peers, our colleagues end up using AI, or I mean, even before AI, these kind of automation tools, this kind of SaaS software, left, right, and center. So in that case, we are not just influenced, or I would say we are essentially expected to use this software as efficiently, if not more, as our other colleagues in the department. So therefore, the adoption of these technologies are naturally much higher in places in this kind of corporate legal departments. So even today, I mean, most of the corporate legal departments would have one or other form of case docketing system or a contract management system. These are already there. They would likely to have an e-signature tool if there are multinational contracts which are being executed. So these are already there. AI works as a layer on top of it. So therefore, it's not too difficult for any of these lawyers to promote themselves into using these. That's what my thesis is, that if we are expecting the larger chunk of lawyers within India to today sit down and start using it, I don't think that's the correct expectation. On the other side, if we are expecting the corporate legal departments to use as much as they can, yes, that expectation is absolutely correct. And that's what is happening today.
Wow, great insights, sir. So as we are running out of time, the last question I'll ask you. So what would your advice be to young lawyers who are graduating in the era of generative AI?
Well, that makes me sound very old, but
you're not that old.
I would say younger lawyers, right? Younger lawyers.
Yeah.
Well,
Let's go with that.
All in good just a week. Yes, I mean, it's imperative to basically on two sides to know this. One is how to use it and also keep our minds open. I mean, this is a clear sort of a message to any of the younger folks who are coming out of law schools and getting into the profession. So at one point or the other, you are going to get asked, what are the kind of risks which are involved if a team of yours or a client of yours has to either develop an AI or has to introduce AI into their products? It's almost like earlier we used to say every company is a technology company. Today, every company is an AI company. Either they are using it or they are essentially making it. So therefore, the lawyers have to be prepared on two areas. First is how to use it. Unless we ourselves are hands-on with respect to this, it's difficult to get a feel, get an understanding, get a flavor of how does it work, right? I mean, if I would not have ever used a stability diffusion, I do not know what are the kind of distortions which come out of such kind of a software. If I were to never use a ChatGPT, I do not know what are the kind of extent and where it can start hallucinating. So that is one. So we need to start using and we need to start understanding that as much as we can. And on the other end, we also need to keep our eyes and ears open as to what are the kind of risks which are there. I don't really want to make it a session of, describing the risks, but if we were to listen in closely, talk to people who are working with it or developing it or, who are actually using it, we will immediately start to understand that it starts creating risk in certain areas of these privacy, in the areas of, in fact, ethics, so on and so forth. So these two are the specific things that I would like someone to focus. And if they do, they can stay assured that when they are facing a situation where they have to either take a call that should I buy an AI tool, they are best placed. Right. Or they have to take a call that yes, this organization wants to introduce an AI software, they are best placed to give them an advice.
Great insights, Biswarup. So Biswarup, thanks a lot for joining this podcast. Trust me, it was really amazing talking to you.
Thank you very much, Avi. It was fantastic talking to you as well.
Sure. As we sign off, remember that law and technology are kindred spirits. They coalesce, innovate, and redefine boundaries. So, dear listeners, keep your legal compass calibrated, your tech binoculars focused, and your curiosity unbridled. Thank you for joining us on this odyssey. Subscribe, share, and keep the conversation alive. Stay curious, stay caffeinated.